three from behind, knocking it away. Tatum cashes in. Pritchard got it back inside and
one. What's up, everyone, and welcome in to Your Celtics Source, home of your 1-1 preseason Boston Celtics. Happy early Sunday afternoon here in New England, just before the Patriots kick off in New Orleans, and later tonight the Celtics host the Cleveland Cavaliers in the third preseason game. But I wanted to take the time just to talk about some of the key takeaways from the first two Celtics preseason games. And I want to talk about, how minutes are going to be handled, how the rotation is going to be handled by Joe Mazzulla, especially when there are lapses in defense and rebounding. I want to talk about the new style and the system that the Celtics are going to play, a much faster transition offense, chemistry, leadership from White, from Brown. And then I'm going to talk specifically on some players that, stood out in the first two preseason games. We'll talk about White. We'll talk about Brown. Simons, we have to talk about Chris Boucher, who I've been really impressed with so far. Josh Minot, Luka Garza, Gonzalez. And then to wrap it up, we will talk about the defensive and rebounding problems, along with, some of the center depth on this team. But let's start with the rotations and, accountability. Joe Mazzulla's message is effort is going to equal minutes. That is the biggest takeaway from, how Joe Mazzulla is handling substitutions, right? He's not been afraid to just sub all five guys out like a hockey substitution for, a lack of 100% effort, 100% energy, diving for the ball, rebounding. It hasn't been, and this might change in the regular season, but he hasn't pulled guys for, little miscues and, maybe being in the wrong position or whatever. He's pulled guys for not playing at full intensity for the entire time they are out there. Right? And this shouldn't be a hard thing for this team because they spent the first couple weeks of training camp in what players are calling a track meet. Just sprinting, conditioning, fitness, right? So they shouldn't be tired out there, right? They have to play that way for this team to get the full potential out of the lineup because they don't have the talent, the 1A, skill and athleticism that, Jason Tatum would bring, a Holiday, a Kristaps Porzingis, right? And so they have to get the most out of just playing tougher than the other opponents, right? And I think Joe Mazzulla is going to have quick hooks throughout the regular season for just being lazy or just not rebounding the ball. Because, as I just mentioned, you don't have the skill to give another team a second chance to score on you, especially when, your rim protection lacks, especially compared to last year, right? Your really only rim protector is Neemias Queta, and everyone else behind that is not a true center. I think accountability is going to be, visible in how Joe Mazzulla subs, right? If Joe Mazzulla subs a guy after 2 minutes being on the court, it's going to be obvious that guy is not giving 100% effort, right? And I think the effort is going to come in how they play, faster tempo, pushing off of makes. Can we get some off-ball movement, some cutting from guys like Hugo Gonzalez if he's on the team? He might be in the G League to start the team, but other guys, because you don't have, the shooting, reliable shooting. There are some very streaky players on this team right now, and so can you score in other ways just besides, driving and kicking to an open shooter like we saw for the last 2 years, right? And, it's going to take time to get to that, right? The chemistry, it's a huge roster turnover. There's really only, 4 guys that have been here for more than 3 years, and a lot of these guys are brand new this year, right? And so, can, Joe Mazzulla get buy-in? Can we get some leadership from a Derrick White, right? He is not only over the map, he's gotten better at this, I think. When he came in 2021, 2022, he was very quiet. He just, did his job. He wasn't the leader on this team. But I think he has to be now, right? He's one of the longest tenures here besides, obviously Jaylen Brown, right? And Jaylen Brown is going to be the primary scorer on this team. He is also going to have to facilitate. Can he get his assists up? And obviously, I think they, almost undoubtedly will go up. But can he, have trust in other guys besides a Derrick White, besides a Payton Pritchard? Because, there's going to be multiple games where Jaylen Brown is being doubled the entire game, especially if the Celtics have a offensive liability on the court, specifically maybe the center position or forward, right? And so if teams double off of him and go to Jaylen Brown, right, Jaylen Brown's going to be taken out of the game. So can he make plays for others and, make teams pay for doubling him, right? Same with Derrick White. Can he not only be a number 2 scorer in this team, can he score 25 points a night, but can he also get his assists up to, 7, 8 maybe, to try and, basically help out his teammate, right? And I think the identity of this team is playing small, playing fast, switchable, built on really energy and not size, because I think there's going to be lots of games where, a Chris Boucher maybe plays that center position, and they go a full small lineup with a bunch of guards and forwards. Right, and I'll talk about Chris Boucher in just a second because I thought he really stood out in these first 2 preseason games. But as I mentioned, Jaylen Brown, right, he looked great in Game 1 against the Grizzlies. Given he wasn't playing against maybe Tier 1 NBA defenders. But, he was efficient, 21 points, aggressive, but in control, which is what you're going to need from him. Derrick White, vocal, double digits assists, starting off on the right foot. He's probably that heart of this new defensive system. Him and Pritchard, I think, right? Pritchard always plays this way, fast transition, basically sprinting up and down the court. I wouldn't say there's no lack for, or no recognition of, basically energy from Payton Pritchard. I think he's always has that full energy, and we'll see what happens with him. I think, he's going to be playing more minutes. We saw in the past, previous seasons, where when he plays more than like 35 minutes a night, he gets a little tired, sloppy towards the end of that. So we'll see, because he's going to have to play that much just for the Celtics to have enough on the offensive end. So we'll see. I know he wants to play full games if he could, all 48 minutes. There are not many guys like that in the league, but we'll really see how he can handle that much attention, especially when you have, what I'm saying, Tier 1 NBA defender on him, right? He's not going to be coming off of the bench as much this season and, getting, that second unit to go against. He's going to be going against starting 5 defenders. So we'll see how he can handle that. Chris Boucher, let's talk about him. I thought he was huge in these first 2 preseason games. Had a huge impact on, just being that glue guy behind the scenes, right? Yes, he brought some streaky shooting and some playmaking, but can he be the guy that is just tough, that sticks up for his teammates, that maybe, gets into the other team's head? Can he be a guy that can just impact winning by just, rebounding, by just being the energy spark, the hustle, right? He wears number 99 because there's 99 problems and he's not one of them, right? So, he has that sort of cocky motto to him, which I think can be huge on this team, right? As long as it's not interfering with the way the team's playing, can he be that guy that just has just basically boiling over with confidence, right? Especially because, he's going to be, I think, the main defensive player on this team. Because I just think he has the best build out of the centers and forwards to be that defensive-minded player, which they definitely need. Along with Josh Minot, right? He's a hustle machine. He is going to create chaos on the defensive end. He needs a lot of work on his offense and his jumper specifically, right? So we're not going to get lots of shooting from him. He did make a couple corner threes, but for the most part, he has to be a big defensive piece on this team. And can he find a way to be productive on the offensive end that he's not a liability? Luka Garza, he's sort of the other way around. He's a pretty smart, situational big. He should be strong on the boards. We'll see. He's been okay. He's not been the biggest problem for the Celtics rebounding. But he's pretty limited laterally, right? It's hard for him to stay in front of, guards and forwards as much, right? We see, Jordan Walsh. Jordan Walsh has to take a step in the right direction in his third year in the league. And yes, I know he has a little injury. His abductor strain that he has right now. But, he has to be, it's his third year. He cannot be a bust for this team, right? Especially when you need his athleticism and offense so much, right? Can he, take that next step to the next level? And then you get, a Hugo Gonzalez, who is just he's 19 years old. He's coming off of the championship in Spain, but he didn't play much. And I'm not sure he's going to play much this year on the main roster. I think he will be in main, not on the main. But we saw some elite defensive flashes. He doesn't have great shooting either. Pretty poor mechanics on that part. But, I thought he was great cutting, as, that's one of the main reasons Brad Stevens brought him in. I also think, the cutting, can he be strong on the boards as well? Things that you're going to need on this team. And so, if he's able to provide that, I think he gets a roster spot. And then just Baylor Shireman, right? He's struggling, I would say, mentally, right? He just needs confidence, right? It's his second year in the league. He's going to have a big offensive role. He's a great shooter. So can he make the most of that? Okay, final things here. We're going to talk about, just the rebounding and defensive issues that this team has. We're not going to talk about Simons. Obviously, Simons has, defensive issues on his own. But I specifically want to talk about the front court, the center position. It's the team's biggest hole, right, is the defense, the rim protection. Porzingis is gone, and Keita really is that only guy, like I mentioned, that can be, a rim protector and a rebounder, right? There's going to be a lot of, if you play small, you can switch, you can get out in transition quicker, but then you lose that rebounding edge. You lose that rim protection, right? You're going to have to get rebounds from White, from Brown, from Simons, right? They all have to be able to, get some rebounds against other forwards. Maybe not centers, but you have to get something, right? Tillman and Garza have to be, I know they're a little limited athletically, right? But they have great positioning. So can they block shots that way. Xavier Tillman, which we just talked about, right? He's quicker. He is leaner. He's lost a couple pounds after his injury or sickness, whatever he had last season, and he looks healthier, which is great. But he's pretty undersized to play that true center position. Luka Garza, right? He's a pretty crafty scorer offensively, but he has those defensive liabilities. So you have to pick and choose, right? Chris Boucher is really the only guy that has been great on both sides of the ball, but he's a much smaller, more of a forward, right? He's gonna be vital in your 5-man options. But if a team runs, with a 7-foot center, Chris Boucher cannot be that option. But yeah, we're gonna wrap it up here. We'll be live tonight after the Celtics host the Cleveland Cavaliers, and you can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, and Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social media, and until next time, go Celtics.